Aloha, friends. Look who I am here with. I'm here with the legendary Bruce Vilanch. Hi, Bruce.
Pardon me, I'm being legendary over there. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Aloha.
Aloha.
Good to see you.
So good to see you, too.
Thanks.
Thank you for spending time with me today.
Well, I'm getting deflowered.
Yeah, well,
There you
this
go.
is the place to do it. So Bruce and I have been friends for about 9 years, and one of the cool things is we have a strong Hawaii connection. So I thought, why not today? Let's create some leis and put some stuff together. And we're then going to talk a little bit about your masterpiece, which is It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time, which is released at the beginning of next month. So really excited about that.
He told me I'd get laid. He didn't mention it was going to be flowers.
Aloha. Okay, so what I want to start with is your idea for It Seemed Like a Bad Idea at a Time. So when you thought about sharing bad ideas,
Yes.
did you have sort of a place in your intuition that said, this might piss some people off?
Well, I guess I'm fortunate in that so many of my collaborators are dead.
True.
And I'm at that age, so and a lot of these things are things that happened in the '70s when the first few years of my life in Hollywood. The book happened because of podcasts I was on during COVID, where people who were much younger than I encountered these pieces of crap I'd written for television in the '70s. I mean, really, a shitload of crap, or a crap load of shit. I don't know. And they'd seen them on YouTube, like this, and I said, and they wanted to know, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Who said yes to this?
Right.
Project? And have they paid their debt to society?
Right.
So I realized I had a book in this, how I wrote the worst TV shows of all time and lived. And I called it Seemed Like a Bad Idea at the Time. And I extended it to movies, and I've been involved in some trash classics, and Broadway, and a bunch of other places, including a failed talk show pilot that I hosted. So it was all stuff that seemed like a bad idea at the time.
Walk us through the process of researching bad ideas and how to tell those stories. Because every chapter in here is such a great story in itself of the beginning, the middle, the end, the unfortunate end for these bad ideas. So what research
They're
did
stories
you do?
I've been telling at dinner parties for years.
I'm great at a dinner party, you say.
Yeah, I'm great at a dinner party. I mean, I kept a journal, and so I went back and looked at those. When I wrote it, when the publisher bought the book, and I got an editor. The editor was spending a lot of time fact checking.
Oh, of course.
And I would
makes
discover
sense.
that things I thought happened on a certain date didn't happen then, and it couldn't have happened, and all that. And I thought, I guess I'm conflating things. And I had to go back and sort them out in my head, because they were great sticklers for making sure I wasn't just anything they could say, well, that's an outright fabrication.
Right. Didn't actually happen.
And what's wrong with that? But,
Yeah.
And we examined the concept of bad ideas. In fact, some of these were good ideas. They were just poorly executed.
Yeah.
And they were like they died in the crib.
Yeah.
Basically, they were crib deaths.
And
some of these shows.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the most fascinating things as a reader is if you're interested, or a creative person, a writer, an artist, a painter, a filmmaker, whatever, the process of collaboration is such a centerpiece and a through line for each of these projects.
Oh, yeah.
And then you get to a place where you're like, well, it fell apart. And what I also love, Bruce, and I haven't told you this yet, the way you close each project and chapter when it is a bad idea, which you mentioned a couple times. When they said that, it seemed like a bad idea at the time in the process. But then you get to the place in the end where I feel like there's almost like a little nugget of humor and also learning for the future, which I loved. Because if you're in any creative process, any creative step along the way, this is invaluable. You have worked with truly almost everyone. There are so many people listed in this that are just fascinating legends in the industry.
Yeah.
Some of them, and you mentioned what they ask for, are asking you, Angelica Houston, How do I get people to stop asking me about this project?
It's impossible. I mean, it's a rhetorical question. It's The Ice Pirates, which was the second movie she made, and I came in to do a rewrite and wound up acting in it. But it was Angelica's second picture, and partially that's how she got her third picture, Prizzi's Honor, for which she won an Academy Award. And so from that day forth, all three of her movies were shown constantly until she had some others. So The Ice Pirates, no one escaped it,
right,
thanks to Ted Turner,
right,
who put it on all of his early cable channels. And as a result, it now lives in the ether, and whenever she is interviewed by a younger person who has seen it, on TV, on a streamer, whatever, YouTube, it's the first thing they ask her about, because they probably saw it when they were very young, and she registered with them.
Yeah.
And so the first thing I want to do is to say, I remember you in The Ice Pirates.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've had a career,
Yeah, right. There are other things to talk about.
And she says, jokingly, she says to me, how do I get through this stuff?
Yeah, I loved that line.
I said, just, give it up, girl. It's just, own it.
There was so much work that went into the Broadway show Platinum. Money, time, tryouts, previews again, rewrites, and then it flops.
Yep.
So, I mean, can you walk us through a little bit about the process of getting to a place where something that you've put so much into then doesn't pay off?
Oh, well, I mean, you eat pizza all day. You gain 30 pounds because it's a flop.
You talked about your apartment in West Hollywood just going back and the phone wouldn't ring.
Yeah, right.
For a while, right.
For a while, yeah, the phone doesn't ring because you have the taint of failure on you. Except that that's the case in the theater. Not so much back then. If you were a variety television writer, lots of things failed. Mm-hmm. I mean, more things fail. Also in the theater, more things fail than work. But everything is a team effort, and so your individual talent isn't tied to a particular project unless it is so you that you can't escape that. I mean, the fact that I wrote the Star Wars Holiday Special doesn't mean I never worked again. It meant they said, well, that was a bad idea.
Right.
But you're good, and let's put you in a better idea.
Right.
So what I've learned is that glosses over. In the meantime, there are drugs.
Well, yeah. And pizza.
There's martinis.
Right.
Which leave little room for error.
So you open the book with the Star Wars Holiday Special, which is notorious.
Right.
There are now... I've told you this many times. You have a Gen Z audience that finds these things. Like you said, during COVID, you were in these podcasts and people were interested. They gave you a lot, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of leeway. Like going to Palm Springs costume shop to go get alien costumes. Well, there was a lot of boundary pushing.
Well, that was a desperation move,
right?
Because we didn't want to use the costumes from the first movie, and George was about to shoot The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
He had new aliens, so we had to just kind of go find aliens.
Yeah. In
a warehouse somewhere, and I mean, we didn't really go to a costume shop, but they looked like they had come from a costume shop, like that they'd been returned the morning after Halloween and hadn't been cleaned. And, they were put together with Scotch tape and Elmer's glue all. And
right.
They were kind of sad looking. Although, to be fair to the technicians who worked on them, they looked okay on camera. They shot well on camera.
Yeah.
I think. I haven't looked at it in a while.
They do. Because after reading how you kind of finagled and pieced together the costumes, it looks really good.
Oh yeah.
That part looks really good. And
but when people look at the show now, they're seeing it on like YouTube. They're seeing a fourth generation tape of the thing.
Yeah.
And so things look different. I mean, Harvey Korman, who plays an intergalactic Julia Child, was an alien with 7 arms, and he had purple makeup, which 4 generations down looks like blackface.
Yeah, right.
And people say, how could he have done blackface?
Right, yeah. You mentioned that.
First of all, he was not a human.
Yeah.
He was an alien.
Right.
7 arms. Yeah. So number 1. Number 2, you saw a very old, poor tape on God knows whatever device.
Right.
And it looked like that, but we wouldn't have done blackface. Were you crazy?
No.
Even in 1978, we wouldn't have done that, and certainly not for an alien.
Yeah. It's very much what you describe, which is like a purple green.
Yeah, it's a purple
when
green.
It shows up. Yeah. So the 1989 Oscars, there were a lot of dynamics at play.
Oh yeah.
With especially the musical numbers, all of the things that you describe. The thing that obviously is so exciting for me would be writing Lucille Ball's last piece that she would ever perform.
Yeah, it was the last thing she did.
The last thing she did. After you wrote it, and she was presenting an award with Bob Hope. If you don't know who Bob Hope is, Google Bob Hope. And Lucille said to me, "I like it, and I'll do it just like that, but he'll do whatever he wants to do. You know that, don't you?" So what was it like working with Lucille Ball, which you did a few times, but what was it like sort of in those last, I guess, that presentation and working with her on that?
Well, that was easy. I'd done a couple of TV shows with her. She was on Donnie and Marie as a guest, and where she did the Music in the Mirror, which was a big dance number that Donna McKechnie did on Broadway, and she was kind of beyond doing it. It was very strategically choreographed. But I realized that she was not going to go down without a fight.
Yeah.
I mean, she was the ultimate pro. Excuse me, she would show up on the set, and she'd find the one dark spot on the set. And she would say, "I'm in an alley."
Yeah, right.
And suddenly a light would come on.
Yeah, right.
You know, she'd been a studio hire, and so she didn't have a lot to say in the roles that she got or what she had to do in them. But once she and Desi were running the show, the writers, the husband and wife team, Madeline and were they husband and wife, Jesse and Marilyn? Madeline. They were all very symbiotic, and they wrote. They wrote to her.
Yeah, right.
So she was used to having that, used to being a part of that, and I was happy to do that with her. And Hope, of course, I had written for in the room and out of the room, and continued to write for after that. But it was a weird number. They weren't presenting an award. They were introducing a number, which was Young Hollywood.
Yeah.
It was all, Alan they weren't going to do the nominated songs that year because there were only 3 nominated.
Yeah.
Alan had another brainstorm, which was to do a number with the children of Hollywood legends, or anything that he could get close to that. And it was a big number that was written by John Kander and Fred Ebb.
Yeah.
Chicago, Cabaret. And Marvin Hamlish was the music director on the show that year. So it was like top of the line people doing it. The kids themselves it was the Nepo number of all time.
All time.
Some of them were good. Patrick Dempsey was wonderful. And Jolie Fisher was great. And some of them were like, don't mention it. So 2 legends came out to introduce this number of the next generation.
The Nepo legends, up and coming.
Right, exactly.
So I saw this on YouTube, the last thing Lucille Ball ever performed. And it's really endearing, and it's sweet. And I saw that before I ever knew you, before I knew you wrote it. There's also footage of her outside of the theater raising her dress to pretend to hail her cab home.
Oh, really?
And her driver comes up and picks her and Gary Morton up.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Can we talk a little bit about your mom? And the final chapter in this is about the talk show where your mom was the co-host.
We did it, I did a pilot for a talk show on Bravo before they had discovered Real Housewives.
Right.
I had brought a Real Housewife, my mother.
The actual living.
On as my sidekick. My Andy Richter, my Ed McMahon. Yeah. Oh, like Guillermo.
Guillermo
He was like
Kimmel.
my Guillermo. She was like my Guillermo.
I love that.
But because she was a great character. But she was not an actress, and she thought she was a performer, and she was very funny when she got going. We brought her on Hollywood Squares a few times in a box in the square with me, and I gave her lines and she did them. But when she had to actually do stuff, she froze.
Yeah.
The other guests were Debbie Reynolds, Tim Curry, and David Hyde Pierce.
Quite a lineup.
So they were fabulous, and they were joking with her, and she loosened up as it went.
Yeah.
But for a while, I thought I was just going to have to do a face plant into the desk because it was...
The cheesecake desk.
It was a desk shaped like a cheesecake. All my favorite things.
Yeah.
You know, I was looking for the penis tower, but they didn't have that.
Oh, that wasn't available.
They had cheesecake and they had balloon. It was very funny. And World of Wonder, who produced RuPaul, which I've been on a bunch of times, produced it, and it was actually quite fun. But it didn't make it because Bravo at the time only had one feed.
Yeah,
and so
right.
this 11 o'clock show would be seen 8 o'clock on the West Coast. And they thought, no, you can't get away with stuff at that hour. Dumped the idea, and they put on reruns of The West Wing, which was very hot.
Yeah, right.
And also, there'd been a change of ownership. It's a long story that is in the book.
It's in the book. One of the things that I think about is it's clear that writing, entertainment, showbiz, it was always a part of what excited you. Mm-hmm. When did you know in your life that this is the world you wanted to be a part of?
Oh, from the outset. My mother told me I learned how to read by looking at movie ads in newspapers. And I would dance in front of the mirror, and I was the kid who was performing at Thanksgiving, whether you wanted him to or not. And my parents were brilliant. They enabled me. They said, look, he loves doing this. He's happy. Because I was not, like an average kid. I was not athletic. I was heavy. I had a deep voice. So I started writing, and I evinced a knack for that. And my parents said, "Oh, good, follow that. You can write for a newspaper. They'll never die." And the Chicago Tribune came after me and said, "Come." I wrote features and light things. They said, "Come to Chicago and do that." So I went to Chicago.
That's amazing.
And I met Bette Midler, and the whole thing began.
Yeah. I'm going to share the final line in the book one more time because it's so special. Nothing ever happens if you don't say yes, even if it seems like a bad idea at the time.